Is anyone completely over tipping in America? Welcome to episode 16 of the Wake and Wander podcast. Tipping is a big part of traveling. You're hiring tour guides, you're eating out at restaurants a lot, you're encountering people that are trying to make your life easier or better or provide you an experience. And tipping is a way to show your appreciation. It's also a way to make sure your money goes directly into the local economy and into the pocketbooks of people who live and work there. But something's got to change with the tipping culture. We're all seeing it now. You go to your coffee shop, you get a black coffee, and they turn the screen around to you and they want a 20% tip or something. I thought the idea of ordering the coffee meant that you would pour it for me. Sorry, I know how it's always been at bars. Someone pours you a beer, opens a can, and you should give them $1 a beer or something like this. Maybe it's a little different with alcohol and in that being in that social setting. Now we're seeing everything. You got a tip. Okay, I get a Uber from point A to point B, and it costs $15 to get there according to the fare, and they just drive me there, and I'm expected to tip. A tip is supposed to be something, it's an extra signal sign of appreciation for someone that goes above and beyond the job description. It is not to be given as a service charge for someone that simply completes the job that I'm paying for. For example, I get in an Uber. It's $15, A to B. They drive me there. Why am I tipping? Am I just tipping because I feel bad? I feel like that's how the culture's going. We're just tipping now because we feel bad. Oh, these poor drivers, they don't make enough. Now Uber even shows you the breakdown. Here's how much the driver earns. Here's how much is for insurance payments and this kind of thing. I don't know if you guys have seen that after you do a ride. Okay. Well, why don't you show me what the Uber's year-over-year earnings are? Why don't you show me what the CEO is making? All this pressure down the line to make us feel bad to tip the drivers now so they don't have to pay them as much. It's classic capitalism. I get it. I'm not taking an anti-capitalistic stance here. I'm just saying that as a traveler, tips can add up. And if we're just constantly pressured into tipping all the time, sure, I want to be nice. I want to provide someone a good living and show them my appreciation. But you got to earn the tip, right? Obviously, I do a lot of traveling, both as an individual and as a guide. And tipping has become just a service charge. And one thing that's really starting to annoy me is just how expected it's become. I think we've all been there, right? You stand there at the counter, you order the coffee, whatever it is. These days, a coffee comes out to $3-4 if just you're getting black coffee. And they turn around the screen, and it has the tipping options on there. And you say, you know what? I'm feeling generous. I'm going to give this person $1 or $2 tip. That's a 30 to 50% tip on a cup of coffee. So you put it in, and they just look up to you and they say, you're all set. You're all set. You're all set. You're all set. No thank you. No appreciation. Just complete expectation, complete indifference towards the fact that you just gave them more money. I don't like it. A tip is extra energy you are sending someone's way because they have given their energy to you in a way that went above and beyond the service that was to be provided. That's the social contract with tipping. That's how it's supposed to be. I work at a job where the income is supplemented by tips, guiding. There is no way I would expect someone to tip me if I did not put noticeable energy into trying to make their trip better. I could easily be a guide that does the bare minimum. I could think solely on the group level and not get to know anyone individually and not try to get to know everyone's individual desires and what they're looking for from the trip. I could just stand up there, address the group as a whole all the time. I could spend my free time huddled away from the group. I could avoid social situations at breakfast or at the hotel bar. But I don't. I put a lot of energy into the trip, and I put a lot of energy into my clients. If they feel this has gone above and beyond, that's awesome. I want them to want to tip. I don't want them tipping because the company tells them they should tip the guide. I mean, cool, it's money either way, but you're going to get more tips if you make someone want to tip you, not tipping because they feel societally pressured to do so. I guarantee you, I mean, the bar's been set real low here in 2025, but you put some energy into it, you put some energy into your clients or customers, whoever they may be, and people will notice. So please stop with the you're all set shit. All right. Curious if you guys tip for Ubers, how you do your tipping. What is your tipping strategy? What do you need to see from someone in order to tip them? Getting into a question I asked last episode about your process of falling asleep on a plane. How do you do it? How do you prepare yourself? Thank you, everyone, for your responses. Ryan, Stephanie, Janine, Derek. Apparently, there's a lot of drug and alcohol use at the airport these days. Most people are saying they just they kick a few back. Hey, Will, I drink 3 beers before I even get through security. That's how I relax. Another one says, hey, Xanax is your friend, just like Ambien. I've never taken Xanax for flights. I know a lot of people, or have heard of people doing it, I should say. I've never tried it. It could be a good one. Other people say they take an edible. Okay, that seems like a good idea. Another one, Will, I can fall asleep no problem because I travel with a neck pillow. A neck pillow. All right, no offense, but if I see someone with a neck pillow at the airport, I know that they don't travel very much. I'm sorry. These things are clunky. The idea of carrying them around everywhere after you get off the plane and keeping them clean and something you want to use over and over again, I just don't see how that works. I feel like a travel neck pillow is something your mom gets you the first time you fly, like in high school when your sports team goes on a trip, or your college sports team, you go on a trip and your mom gets you a neck pillow so you can get some sleep on the flight. I've never really connected with the neck pillow as a frequent traveler item, but I see how it could work. I've been jealous of people who had them before in the past, so I guess that's one option that's not alcoholic or a narcotic. But hey, overall, the answer to my question is a resounding drugs and alcohol. Everybody is medicating before they get on the flight in an effort to fall asleep. Kind of wild, just kind of funny social thing we do to just avoid the pains, I guess, of flying. Speaking of suffering and pains, I came across an article I wanted to share with you guys. It caught my eye, and it sent me down a little bit of a rabbit hole. The first article was entitled, Why You Should Never Leave Your Luggage on the Hotel Room Floor, According to Travel Experts. This author goes on to explain how, of course, we all know that you shouldn't put your luggage on the bed. Apparently, this has already been established in the media. And it makes sense. I've traveled with people who have found it this way. They feel like your luggage is dirty from traveling, and if you put it on the bed, you're transferring those germs onto the bed. I'm not a germaphobe. I'm also 6'2", so putting my luggage on the bed when I'm trying to get organized is the easiest place for me. So that doesn't really skeeve me out. But, okay, we've said we can't put the luggage on the hotel bed. Now, apparently the floor is not a good place either, because if you leave your suitcase on the floor, you are exposing it to pests and bugs and things that could get inside of it. The author quotes a traveler who says, while traveling Jamaica, I once left my luggage on the floor for a short period, and upon returning home, I discovered that I had inadvertently brought back small lizards that had crawled into my suitcase. It goes on the article to say other examples of people who have had different things crawl into their luggage. Bed bugs are notorious travelers, the article says, and they can easily crawl into your luggage, clothing, and personal items, hitching a ride back to your home. Hotel room floors, the article says, despite regular cleaning, can still harbor dirt, bacteria, and other unmentionables, especially hotel rooms with carpet. Floors are exposed to the shoes of previous guests, spills, and cleaning chemicals. Beyond the ick factor, they also noted that leaving your luggage on the floor can create an organizational nightmare. The suggestion is to put some of your clothes in the closet, or at the very least, place your luggage on a hard surface to reduce the risk of picking up potential bed bugs. Okay, some thoughts on this. I feel like it's a little bit of a germaphobe mentality to say I'm not going to put my luggage on the bed or I'm not going to put it on the floor. Things could crawl in. I think bed bugs are one of those things you just got to use your judgment. I mean, you look at the place you're staying in. If you're staying at a punky, rundown motel in the middle of nowhere because you're just on your way, okay, you might want to use a little more caution or take a look versus staying at a 4-star resort or something like this, or a nice, clean Airbnb. Maybe not as much of a problem. But I did have a story about this, of bringing something back home unintentionally. I cannot say whether it was the result of me leaving my bag on the floor or I don't know how this happened, but I can tell you the story. Back in 2014, I went to Africa. I went to Kenya. It's actually my first trip ever to Africa. Really special trip. And this was back when I was working as an editor for Condé Nast. So I was really on the go. I was traveling 2 to 3 weeks a month pretty steadily at this time. After my trip to Kenya, I was returning home. I lived in Denver at the time in an apartment, 2-bedroom apartment with a roommate. The day after getting home from Kenya, I was going to Mexico for a different assignment. And before I went to Kenya, I had packed my bag, a separate bag, ready for Mexico, just in case I got delayed and didn't get home in time or whatever it was. I would have be ready to rock. Return home from Kenya, throw my bag in the corner of my room, spend the night, catch up with my roommate, whatever I did. Next morning, grab the other bag, head off to Mexico. About a day later, I get calls and messages from my roommate, and apparently some sort of flying ant had gotten into my bag from Kenya and had evolved and emerged from my bag and completely taken over my bedroom. My roommate said he awoke to some weird buzzing sounds and went to investigate. My entire room was just filled with flying ant creatures. It's possible they were picked up somewhere other than Kenya, maybe on the airplane on the way home. I don't know. It took my friend a couple days to get this under control and was quite a funny story. And because I was gone to Mexico for about a week, I didn't have to deal with any of it. So I just had to buy my roommate beers when I got home. But this can happen. Things can get into your luggage and can lay eggs or kind of reproduce while it's in your bag. And then you get home and all hell breaks loose. So I get this a little bit. I get the idea that you want to be careful. It's just like anything else. Be aware of your surroundings and where you're staying. It is kind of funny to someone like me who does a lot of camping and backpacking where I'm always just putting my bags on the actual earth, on the ground, where there's ants and bugs and all kinds of things all the time. But putting your suitcase on the hotel room floor is, according to experts, like a horrible idea. It is kind of funny. The part where they lose me is a link in this article, which I couldn't resist clicking on either. They're going through everything I just said about how you should take precaution, maybe use the drawers, maybe use a luggage rack. And then the article ends with, of course, you could always leave your luggage in the bathtub, a favorite luggage spot for experts who are in the know about bed bug protection. Now, I had to click on this link, leave your luggage in the bathtub, and it took me to an article by Travel and Leisure, which writes about really nice places most of the time. But get this, they suggest that the best place to put your luggage is in the hotel bathtub. I've never heard of this before. Here's how the article starts. Checking your hotel room for bed bugs should be the first thing you do when you walk in the door. Whenever I check into a hotel, the expert says, I immediately put my luggage either in the bathroom, the entryway, or any space away from the bed and not on the carpet. This way, my belongings are far enough away from any furniture where bed bugs usually reside, and I significantly lower my chances of bringing them home. She also recommends leaving a note for housekeeping on top of the suitcase, asking them to leave the bag in the tub. I've occasionally had my bags moved and placed on luggage racks, which can also be home to bed bugs, so the note ensures my luggage stays where I left it, in the bathtub. Another travel expert quoted in the article says, the bath can easily be washed down first and is likely to be one of the cleanest surfaces in the room due to its frequency of cleaning. The bathtub not only provides itself to be an efficient use of space if you have a small room, but I have found no unwanted bugs or insects have stowed away my bag since storing my luggage there. If your hotel room doesn't have a bathtub, the shower works fine as well. Wow. Well, I've been traveling full time for 15 years. I've had one incident where something has gotten to my bag. That's, I mean, the way these articles, it makes it seem like everybody's bringing bugs home at any time. Again, very bizarre for a publication like Travel and Leisure who writes about really nice places. But I really can't, I can't understand this. The bath can easily be washed down first. So someone checks into the hotel, they go into the bathroom, they clean the bathtub, dry it out, and then put their suitcase in there. And then every time they want to shower, they take the suitcase out, they put it back in, they take it out, take it back in. Maybe if you're that concerned about bed bugs, you shouldn't be traveling. Just an idea. I'm going to put this one in the show notes just for giggles, as they say. People are putting their suitcase in the bathtub. If you do this, I need to hear from you. Will at wakeandwander.com, at wakeandwanderwill on Instagram. I want to quickly go through some mail we got from readers. Thank you guys for sending in the articles you are reading. First one, sent over from Europe. There was a study done comparing train travel and flying in Europe between destinations, and the study found that train travel is often more expensive than flying between major cities in Europe. The article talks about how there's such a drive to reduce carbon emissions and to be more sustainable. However, train travel, which is usually billed as the more green-friendly option, is often more expensive. In fact, air travel is actually cheaper on 54% of 109 cross-border routes examined. This has always been one of my gripes with train travel in Europe. Sure, I love traveling by train. I think it's awesome. It's a great way to do it, especially if you have the time. It might take you a little longer than flying, but you're going to see a lot more, and it's just so easy and nice, and it's really not something that's available in the United States outside of the Eastern Seaboard. So you can bop around between places really easily, and it's fun to arrive by train. You arrive right in the center of town typically, but it's not necessarily the cheapest option all the time. So if it's not going to be cheaper and it takes longer, sometimes it's hard to justify. And I get that. And that's why a lot of, I think, Americans and other travelers choose to fly between destinations rather than take the train. Just an interesting article. It's a piece of advice I always give. It's don't be fooled by it. A lot of first-time travelers go to Europe and they think, oh, I'm just going to take the train everywhere and it's so easy and this and that. Yeah, I mean, it is easy, but it's going to cost you. Train travel is not cheap in Europe. Another one comes in from Aaron in Colorado. Aaron, dude, good to hear from you. We got to get you on the pod, buddy. Another travel and outdoor writer. He sends an article concerning the best time to visit a place is, and the headline is Why Best Time to Visit No Longer Applies. This story appeared in the BBC. It leads with a narrative about someone traveling to Nepal in the spring, in April and May, which is often billed as the best time to go to Nepal for trekking due to weather conditions. However, when this person arrived there, they found that the conditions weren't so great. They found that the air was polluted and at low visibility, unexpected rainstorms, things like this. And this is the lead into an article just explaining how climate change is changing things around the world, and it's also impacting what are, quote unquote, the best times to visit certain places. So, for example, this trekking period in Nepal is having more turbulent weather. For example, Japan, cherry blossoms are apparently blooming earlier. Obviously, we have hotter summers in certain places now. Quote, the planet's warming since around 1980 is making heat waves, droughts, and floods more frequent and severe. All three of these are common during summer when travel peaks. And now the unpredictability stretches year-round. Quote, extremely wet and dry periods can happen any time of year, including shoulder season, if weather patterns get stuck for a while. Here are my thoughts. One, I just feel like, yes, we're becoming more aware of this now, but this is always kind of a risk. I mean, I've been guiding in Hawaii for years now, and winter is always supposed to be the rainy season, summer is the dry season. But like I always tell my guests, when you come in summer, that doesn't mean it can't rain. And when you go in winter, that doesn't mean it will rain. There's always weather patterns that don't quite match on a day to day to the overall trends. So you always have to be careful with that. If you're traveling somewhere thinking, oh, this is the dry season, so it won't be. No, it's typically the dry season. It's typically the wet season. That doesn't mean you're guaranteed to get. Weather is the most unpredictable thing we deal with in general. Another thing I think about this is this question kind of bugs the shit out of me, to be honest. I get asked all the time, what's the best time to visit Hawaii? What's the best time to come to Colorado? What's the best time to go to Europe? The best time, the best. What's the best time? The best. We got to just get rid of our obsession with this. You can go anywhere, any time of year, so long as your mindset is correct. And it depends on what you want to do. If you have a very single platform trip, like you're going to Japan to see the cherry blossoms, and that is the only reason you're going, and if you do not see the cherry blossoms in full bloom, then you will be completely disappointed. That's on you. You are setting yourself up for complete disaster. And I would just advise against anyone who is going to a place on a very single platform like that that's weather dependent. This is what I've always talked about in previous episodes on this show. Ski travel, one of the hardest things to pull off successfully. It's a very high likelihood of being disappointed because you don't know what the conditions will be. You can come to Colorado in the winter where it typically snows. It's ski season, but you may come on a 4-day period where you don't get any snow or there hasn't been snow for a couple weeks. Does that mean it doesn't snow in winter and that winter is not the best time to go skiing? No, it's the best time to go skiing, generally speaking. However, when you are cherry picking 4 days out of a calendar or 1 week out of a calendar, it might not be in line with the overall trend. If you go to Hawaii in July or in August or in the summer, most likely you are going to have dry, sunny, hot days. However, it does rain in Hawaii in the summer. So you could go and get some rain. It's possible. On the East Coast, people rent houses at the beach for a week every summer. Do they get 7 days of sunshine every time? No. Is that the best time of year to go to the beach? Yeah. That's the thing about this article. I just feel like there was no flexibility, and it felt like there was a expectation of what the weather exactly was going to be like. And this comes from social media. This comes from, I see this picture on this clear day under these conditions, and I want to see that. It's not about experiencing the place in all its complexities, in all its weather, in all its phases. It's just about recreating something that they saw. So when we ask when's the best time to come, let's think about it. Generally speaking, it's the best time to go to the beach during the summer. But in my mind, I know it could rain a day or two, or maybe the whole time. I don't know. So if that were to be the case, what would I do, and what else am I interested in other than the beach? And if you can't answer that question, if you can't have that backup plan, if you can't have that side of you that says, well, actually, if it's rained, it's okay, because I've always wanted to take a drive this way and see this museum, or I've always wanted to do this over here, or I'm also interested in this side of the place, so it's okay. I'll be able to figure it out. That's a true traveler's interest. If you're going on a single platform, yeah, you're going to be disappointed now and in the future because you're banking on the one thing we can't control and we can't predict very well, and that's weather. Case in point, here's a quote from the article. The gap between what's expected and what's real is further compounded by traveler perceptions. Quote, they don't build an idea of a place based on reality, but an idealized version, and it doesn't get updated. Exactly what I'm saying. Travelers have a picture in their mind of what they want to see, and they don't update it to reality. They read that In the spring, Nepal was free and clear, and they just expected every day to be like that. The best thing we can teach travelers is how to manage these expectations, especially now in the social media world where everything is polished and delivered in that way. Aaron, appreciate you sending it in, buddy. I want to move on now to tell you about a trip I took recently down to Mesa Verde National Park. It's located in southwest Colorado. It's not an overwhelmingly popular park, both in name and in visitation, mostly due to its very remote location. It's hard to get to. The nearest airport you may fly into would be Cortez or Durango. And Cortez really only has flights from Denver. It's a Denver Air Connect flight. Durango has a few more options, including Frontier, I believe. Yeah, American, United, and Frontier all go to Durango from Denver, Dallas, Phoenix, like regional hubs. And it's well off the beaten path for most road trips. If you're going I-70 through Colorado, for example, you're hundreds of miles away. So it's not that easy to get to, but it's a really special place. I was able to, it's about 4 hours or so from where I'm based out here in western Colorado. From here, you drive down through some beautiful towns. Western Colorado, or the Western Slope, as we call it here locally. You have Ouray, which is referred to as the Switzerland of America. I'm not a huge fan of that moniker. We should just be who we are. But the mountains there get really tight, a little more jagged than the Front Range, dramatically beautiful. Then you head down from there and you go through Red Mountain Pass, which connects Ouray and Silverton, and it is known as the $1 Million Highway for its costs, but locally that name is also just mean for its $1 million appeal, beautiful views, and if you've never driven out west, it will probably push your buttons in terms of its scenery and just its ability to hug the side of the cliff, etc. Then you go through Silverton and get to Durango, and that area between Silverton and Durango is incredible. San Juan National Forest, just a lot to explore and play there. And then from there, from Durango, you're looking at about 45 minutes to an hour to the entrance to Mesa Verde National Park. Now, this is important because your directions, you have to look closely. Once you get to the entrance of Mesa Verde National Park, you still have about 45 minutes to an hour drive until you get to the main sites of the park. It's really spread out, and the reason it's like that is because the park is built over a system of canyons and mesas. For those of you that don't live out west, the mesas, those flat top mountains that would be on the sides of the canyons, you come up from the rim of the canyon and you come on top, and the top is flat. About 1,400 years ago, in 600 AD, Native Americans lived there. Now, I don't want to overcomplicate everything with a bunch of dates going everywhere. You'll learn more of the specifics when you get to the park, but generally speaking, when these Native Americans first settled here, they were living on top of the mesa, and they would go down into the canyons looking for water. They would go hunting different animals that were in the region, and they sustained themselves this way. At some point after their arrival, as it was explained to me in the national park, the Native Americans had trade routes set up at this time. As they were getting visitors to their region and they were visiting others, they learned skills, and they would bring things back with them, both in the form of actual goods and with technology. These Native Americans were able to bring back a very important piece of technology from the south, most likely towards Mexico, and this was farming. At some point, they brought this technology of farming and moved out of being complete hunter-gatherers to now relying on agriculture to feed their people. They started growing mostly corns, beans, and squash. That's obvious evidence that the technology and the idea and the food came from the south. And they were able to support themselves. So they didn't have to move as much. They didn't have to go out and expand their radius in search of food because they could grow their own. This allowed them, in theory, to settle down a bit more. And these people went on to build what the park is famous for: cliffside dwellings, cliff dwellings. Think of a canyon wall that has caves and caverns and different sections that are sunk in, And these people would use the rocks of the region. They would gather wood, and they would use the mud and sand to make a mortar of sorts. And they built these elaborate dwellings on the sides of the cliffs, in the caves that are on the cliffs. It's incredible. And in the park, there are thousands of sites. When you drive along the roads of the park, you can actually just see random ruins wherever you're driving, which is really cool. And they have 4 specific ruins that are set up that can be toured. These spots are staggered a bit. 2 of them are very close to each other. The 2 that I did, the Cliff Palace and the Balcony House. These are both extraordinary, and they're easy to do one right after another, so logistically they make sense. There's some other ruins that are in a different part of the park, and there's even some ruins you can get a backcountry tour and go hiking to see. That tour isn't offered as frequently. For my visit, for the timing it worked out, I did the Cliff House and the Balcony House. The Cliff House is the largest of the ruins that are left at the park. It's just incredible to see what these people were able to do, and that many of these places are still in pretty good shape. The national park has done some work on them. Some of the flooring, some of the access has been not necessarily, it's not like there's pavement, but it's been just kind of maintained a little bit better or re-put together a bit. But many of the dwellings will be 1 or 2 stories, and it'll be explained to you how they used to be 3. So some of these things have deteriorated and come down a bit, but for the most part, it's astounding how well preserved they are. And it really gives you the chance to visit and to imagine what life might have been like there. One of the guides did a beautiful story about how these people used to live there, the sounds you might expect. One of the biggest things about moving to this agricultural society is that you had to process a lot of this food. So one of the main jobs would be grinding the corn, typically done by the women. Men would do the actual work in the fields. Women would grind the corn. Don't think of fresh corn that we eat, off the ear. They would dry that out, and then they would grind the corn down into a flour and use that for cooking and making things. This rubbing of the corn on the stone, on the wooden bowl, or whatever they used, would have been a prominent sound. In the Cliff Palace, for example, you would have had up to 100 people maybe living there at a time. They would refer to it as the New York City of Mesa Verde. And then the question is, why did the people desert these places? The picture of life that was painted back then was very interesting. As I mentioned, having these trade routes, they were introduced new technology, new food, new ways of life, and also information. So if you're living in the middle of the desert and you have a trade route that spans out, say, to the California coast, or say down a little further south where the Rio Grande River is, and you hear of civilizations who are living with much easier access to water and resources, you may consider moving. Now, it might not be the time for you to move. Maybe you have a 1-year-old kid, or maybe your father is getting older now and wouldn't be able to make that journey. So it's not believed that everyone relocated at once. It wasn't some mass uprising. They don't believe that. They think people left little by little based on when they would be able to leave, such as factors I just explained. Their family is in a condition and an age where making a journey of a couple 100 miles or even further would be feasible. And also what the state of the village was back home. So as people start to leave, who is left? Did the doctor, the medicine man, leave? Did the major craftsman leave? Are the people in your village, as these experts start to leave in search of their own better life, has the apprentice been changed? And this could alter severely the way of life for a village. As quote-unquote important or skilled people left, it would change the dynamic of where it's living. Extremely interesting and just beautiful. You gotta like the desert, right? This is in a very dry area. That's what's also interesting. A common denominator between many of the cliff dwellings that still remain and some of the most prominent ones, like the Balcony House or Cliff Palace, is that they had natural springs inside them. Now, don't think Florida, a natural spring bubbling up. This is a desert spring, so you would have to dig down into the ground, and your hole could fill up with water. It's that kind of spring. But this was invaluable back then, and it's thought that maybe some of these dwellings were built upon the springs in order to protect them, either for a private family and entity, or more likely for communal and for your village, for your people. You would want to protect the water sources from, let's say, another tribe that might want to come in and move into the area. For protection of natural resources, caretaking, they think this could be one of the reasons that people live there too. Visiting the cliff dwelling areas is very fun because they all require some sort of ladder climb or crawling through an entrance or exit spot that's narrow and low. And that's an adventure. And it's amazing to think about how these people did it without ladders. They were very good at reading the land. They were very good at figuring out ways to navigate the cliffs. And why wouldn't they? They didn't have TV back then. This was their life. This is what they were focused on. For us to visit there today is really cool. And just to think about that migration that occurred and then how people left. And for me personally, it's absolutely amazing to think about the transition of life and way of life that happened there. When they first arrive, they're hunter-gathering. Then they get this new technology, which is agriculture. We don't think about agriculture as a technology, but back then it changed civilization. For better and for worse. It made access to food a lot easier, a lot more self-sufficient, a lot more dependable. You could store years' worth of food, they say, based on one good harvest, which was great. That takes off a lot of stress, especially when you're hungry and you're a hunter-gatherer. However, it did tie us down. It's crazy to think about the agricultural revolution that way. Many believe it happened in Europe and Mesopotamia and these areas way sooner, maybe 10,000 BC or something like that. No matter where it happened locally and at what time, just think of the impact that had in making people stay in one place or encouraging people to stay in one place. Depending on what you read about that and the way you think about that, there's definitely pluses and minuses to that. It is essentially the base point of the life we enjoy today, where we can remain in one place and confidently have access to food. For a nerd like me, I thought that was really interesting. And if you go, make sure to bring a pair of binoculars because as you're exploring some of the mesa tops, which also have ruins on them, those don't require appointments. You can just drive some of these park roads and you pull off at different stops and overlooks. Many overlook cliff dwelling places, and you'll want to bring binoculars for that so you can see in detail across the way. You also have to have some planning when you're going because the 4 tours, or however many there are, 4 to 5, they require reservations. It's only $8 to make a reservation per person, and they have tours essentially every hour, but you need to do them. You can't do them on site. There's no cell phone service at that point in the park. In fact, it says it all over their website. And sure as heck, when I was there checking in, someone couldn't load their ticket on their phone because they didn't have service, and they got sent away. They had to go all the way back to the visitor center to do it. Just get your reservations in advance. Look it up. Blow with the wind wherever it takes you based on your timing. I wouldn't worry too much about it. It's a really cool, underrated, lesser-known national park, and it could be the basis for a really cool Colorado, New Mexico type road trip if you're into that sort of thing. Either way, keep it on your radar. It's got to be, in my opinion, one of the most well-preserved ancient ruins in the United States. I'm trying to think what else that could be. If you have ideas, hit me up, will@wakeandwander.com, @wakeandwanderwill. I'll leave you with this, a question. If you write me in, tell me what yours are, I'll tell you what mine is in the next episode or two. I want to know something you bought while you were traveling that when you were there in that moment, it seemed like an awesome idea and an excellent thing to bring home and incorporate into your life. But then once you got home, it was a total flop, more or less. For example, some things that I've brought home that have worked. A Turkish coffee pot. I don't know if you've ever seen one. It's essentially a small cup with a long handle that you can put over your stove, and you make the Turkish coffee. I brought one of those home. It was awesome. I enjoyed the coffee while I was in Turkey. When I came home, I made coffee with it for like a month. I don't use it as much anymore, but it was an awesome thing to bring home, share, make the Turkish-style coffee for friends. Yes, they thought I was annoying sometimes, but it's cool to share that with someone, right? Hey, I just got back. Here's how we drank it there. Let me show you how it was, right? Kind of nerdy, kind of annoying, but also kind of cool. Things like this that worked out. Tell me something that you brought home that you thought it would be really cool that it didn't work out. Appreciate you guys very much. Thank you for listening. See you next time.
Yes, now I'm riding the terrain, flying high up once again. Got my crew sitting healthy and my boo living wealthy. Level 99, never settle in my mind. So I pedal and I climb up the pedestal and find almighty weapons. So I calm, lightly step into the castle. Satchel, tackled, wrestled down the corridor where I'm grounded through the floor. Roundhouse into my core, down, out, and through the door. Sword down at my side, I gotta round up and ride. Face boss, break jaws till I take off. Face off, stop and swing my serious strike. This is it, take the title, disappear in the night. To the whole wide world. Got the keys to the kingdom overseas with the wisdom guarantee that my rhythm hit the whole wide world. Slay the boss in the castle when we cross final battle. Then I walk out and travel to the whole wide world. Got the keys to the kingdom overseas with the wisdom guarantee that my rhythm hit the whole wide world. Slay the boss in the castle when we cross final